years old. The other thing I wanted to go to, which I thought was an interesting piece, was Matt Walsh actually engaged engaged with just Pearlythingz. I thought this was interesting because it was about wives. Let me ask my wife with a throw up emoji. Now, here's the thing. I agree and disagree with both of them at the same exact time. Because you know for a fact, you know that you know men who, when they say that, that is them asking for permission. Now, it's not them consulting, is what Matt's about to say in this tweet. It's them blatantly knowing, like, if they do this, she will take sex off the table. She'll threaten the marriage. She'll take the kids. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't need to go into it. I can't say that people deny these situations exist. But Pearl, let me ask my wife. Throw up emoji. So Matt Walsh quotes it saying, "Not always a bad response from a husband. For instance, if you ask me what we're doing this weekend, this will nearly always be my answer. And same with me. If you ask me what am we doing this weekend, my first thought is not to ask my wife for permission. It is, she knows our schedule better than I do. And she's just a better organized person." But Matt Walsh breaks it down. Let me continue. "And then when I ask her, she'll tell me that we have a thing at 2 o'clock on Saturday and another thing on Sunday, and that she already told me about both things 4 times." Now that cracks me up because that's literally that's my relationship with my wife. I'm pretty sure every marriage in history has worked this way. Now, I may be forgetful, right? But it's because I'm focused on the work things, the money things, the job stuff, where she's much more focused on the social orientation. And that's where our partnership is fruitful, in the fact that she's worried about those aspects. I'm worried about mine. We come together, we communicate, and as a partnership, we're like, okay, this is what we're doing together. This is what we're doing as a couple. This is what we're doing as one. We are one. And that is how marriage is supposed to work. And so Matt Walsh goes and continues on the thread. "Of course, you also need to ask your wife anytime you can't find anything around the house. She'll say it's in the closet by the stairs. And you'll say, I checked and it's not there. And she'll go and look herself and find it in 3 seconds. Again, I have never known of a marriage that doesn't work this way. It's a law of the universe." And I'm saying this is exactly the dynamic that I have with my wife. And it works for us. And it worked for my parents. My dad is one of the hardest workers I've ever met in my entire life, but he could not tell you what we were doing Sunday at 3:30 p.m. He just didn't roll like that. He wasn't like that. He wasn't, he's the guy who's on his phone like while something's happening on the news, and his head's on a completely different place. And it's just how women and men are designed a little bit differently. There are strengths and weaknesses to this. And that's what he's pointing out here, And even Ian Miles Chong chimes in, women are just better at planning. But he follows this up with another one because Pearl, I think, continues to subtweet him. Or no, she quote tweeted him. "There's a difference between asking your wife what the schedule is versus asking your wife's permission. Agreed. A boss would never ask his secretary for permission to go to X and Y. Why do modern women submit to their bosses and not their husbands?" Now here I will say is a little bit disingenuous because nothing that Matt Walsh said had anything to do with the boss talking about that. Matt Walsh was specifically talking about his own marriage and how he believes most marriages work on a bell curve on average. And so I think this is where Pro gets those whole the negative flack for being what are you talking how are you going to take it to that tangent? Maybe it's very clickbaity almost. But he quotes this, and I love Matt. Maybe Matt's beautiful with a lot of the words that he says. And harsh too, but I like what he says for the most part. "Sure, I wouldn't ask for my wife's permission, like I'm some kind of child. But I do consult with her, about many things. I trust her judgment and insight. I think when a man says, let me ask my wife, often he's referring to consultation, not permission. Now, when he says often, I think I disagree with that. I think it's probably about 50-50. I think most men, I mean, not most men, I think a lot of marriages, that's exactly the case. And I think for a lot of marriages, what Pearl is saying is exactly the case. And what are the numbers there to decide? Like, do we have a metric that's like, like how cucked is your marriage? How cucked are you as a husband? I don't know. I mean, obviously there's a major one that you can have. And I apologize. I don't even have the YouTube chat put up. I probably should. Hey, no, I appreciate you. Yeah, everything's well. Kukla, everything's going well over here. Just trying to get stuff situated and like be scheduled in and have like a much more coherent schedule. And yes, I thought she did pretty well on Tim's show. She kind of took it into like the marriage, or not marriage, the relationship direction, and then like they held it there for a while, which I thought was funny because at the beginning of Tim Pool's episode, they're like, we're going to talk about Ukraine and all this, and you got plenty to say about that, right, Pearl? And she like laughs because obviously like she didn't. But they did, and on that Timcast episode, they get into the aspects of that New York Post article that was trying to flame the Whatever podcast. Man, Tyler's in here. What did Tyler get in here? What's up, brother? I appreciate you, man, dropping in. But when she goes on to Tim Pool's show, they bring up the New York Post article that specifically is targeting the Whatever podcast, and then framing it in the narrative of which he just runs this podcast to talk all this BS about women. And that argument fails on multiple fronts. Here's why. Tim's very own Mary Morgan, I believe is her name, is on that show as a female who is on the side of Atlas. Well, I won't say on the side of Atlas, but it's on that side of the table who is opposing the ideas being espoused by most of the women that they bring on, who are a little bit more lefty, the OnlyFans girls. And I see it all the time. I mean, I think Brittany Venti is also another individual who constantly brings up this material. Brittany Venti will go on and on about how these podcasts like cherry pick these women. And so it's like, okay, so you have the Whatever podcast, Just Pearlythingz, you have Fresh and Fit, and there's how many more of them? Can you even name? Like, what's the other ones that like aren't like that? Like the Jubilee and the Button and things like that. And the mental gymnastics that you have to walk through to tell other people that they are every single woman in those instances are cherry picked. It's like, you got it. Okay, come on, man. Like how hard is it to say that the majority of women are left leaning and thus embrace a lot more of this independent feminist ideology? That's not a hard thing to say. But it's easier to flame the Whatever podcast for the mission that he's got when he's one of the most like unegotistical, neutral people on the platform. I mean, the guy's almost like as vanilla as Asmongold on some of these takes. And again, it just shows the disingenuousness of the media. And then the New York Post of all places, the publication that got censored for the Hunter Biden laptop story, is then going to be the one who tries to shame Brian Atlas and the Whatever podcast. And it's funny because the one issue that Pearl was like, they're going to target his show and not mine. She was like, I think I'm more aggressive than he is. And I would agree with that. I think Pearl like antagonizes him a bit more. Like Brian occasionally would be like, well, I mean, come on, or put like a hat on. But Brian's not one to get angry or yell. Pearlythingz will actually like go back and forth, combative, like be a bit more catty when it comes to the girls she has on the show. And it just, again, is like, why is there such an unwillingness to just say like, yeah, dude, like most women believe this way, but the way most men are structured to believe and feel is not this way. And it's just crazy stuff. But those are the two major things that I did have that I wanted to go through. I was going to keep this stream short. If you want to check me out a little bit later, I'm probably going to be streaming later on tonight when I'm doing I'll be doing like OSRS and I'll catch back up on the news some. I just heard a bang on the door behind me, and I don't know if it's the cats or if someone's in my house. So I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I appreciate everyone for coming in and stopping by. Let's hope that there's not a Syrian refugee with a knife in my house, but otherwise, I'll probably be pretty good. Again, thank you for stopping in, Tyler. Kukla, I appreciate seeing you on the live streams all the time. Love seeing you guys come in here. I am doing my best to try to get more actively into it. I know I had like a 9-10 day gap with no content, so I apologize. I lost a few subscribers because I was not being as professional as I could be. But now that I got the schedule set, money's coming in through the remote job too, and then I got everything tightened down. I ended up quitting the second job I took on because it just wasn't worth it to have all that time being put out, and then I couldn't stick to YouTube as much as I wanted to, and it just kind of dragged me down a little bit like that. But I gotta get a better way to put this up. Who was saying, I just feel she's posturing behind her family's money, hasn't lived life, and isn't truly what she proposes to be. So here's my thing is like I will say this, I do not know enough about her background to make a firm statement about that. I do know references from like The Quartering with Jeremy, that he often brings up that she has this insane background of money and is like very what's the word? It seems very disingenuous given like previous positions that she's had. Now I will say I'm somebody who hasn't like looked into her background, but at the same time I also don't like the fact that we use somebody's background as a way to determine like how much they truly care about something, because people can change. You know, I mean, obviously, like not everybody can change, and it's probably in the minority that if even people that do change, but it's possible. And maybe she had some kind of catalytic event that like turned her lights on like that. I think the same happens to Ollie London TV. People are like, this must be a psyop, this must be fake, because people just simply can't believe that Ollie London would change her beliefs like that. I mean, full-blown leftist was doing Korean face, you know, with all this plastic surgery, and then all of a sudden is like extremely anti-woke. Now I do agree, like that's like out of nowhere, but if you're asking me, it's like maybe this individual just had intellect and realized they were wrong. I don't think that's hard to believe. I think it's harder to believe, not harder to believe. I think it's harder and harder and harder for people to come to those conclusions because there are so many built-in echo chambers with how algorithms wrap up content and keep people informed in specific styles. But maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe she's completely posturing, and this is a whole kind of ordeal to get clicks for her to appeal to men in some way. I've seen the argument too, where it's like she knows that she's not that attractive, so she has to find a way to make herself a high value woman, yada yada yada. And maybe that's true, but I also don't like attacking somebody for how they look, unless it's somebody who's putting themselves out in the open, doing ignorant stuff. But maybe you're right, and maybe that she is a complete liar, and she's just trying to poison the minds of men and ruin the world one day at a time with her videos. But I think she does make good points. The same way with like how Andrew Tate, just like, you know, maybe it's not every point, but he does make some like commonsensical, like hard to disagree with, just facts of life type statements where you're like, yeah, I mean, yeah. You don't have to like the person as the individual they are, but you can also agree that the message they bring, and that's always, I think, I mean, even in the Bible it teaches, don't attack the messenger. The message is what's the most important. The conveyment of the message, you know, does it truly mean something? But it's probably not somebody that's in my house. It's probably my cats trying to rip that door down because they're losing their minds about food that I did not feed them with. But again, I appreciate you all for coming in. I do have the stream end that at the mean tweets designed for me, which is pretty dope. But like I said, I'm going to try to stream a little bit later on if I get caught up on work, put a few hours in, make some dollars for me and my wife, and then catch back up on the news and see what's popping. Or maybe do OSRS and have news pulled up while we're doing that too. Appreciate you guys stopping in. You know, it means a lot to me. Thank you very much. You guys take care, and if I don't see you later on tonight, you guys have a good rest of your day. Peace out.